Thank you, listeners. You're joining us for today's Elko Live here on the last day of May 2023. Boy, this year just seems to be happening fast. County,
it really is.
It is happening fast, Delmo. I'm going to adjust your microphone
Sure.
for you. I have Commissioner Delmo Andreozzi in studio. Thank you so much for taking advantage of this opportunity. As I'd said just a short time ago, we cleared the deck, Delmo, because there's just some really important issues shaping up. In fact, the County Commission has called a special meeting for Friday to talk about this late development in the Nevada legislature, which is really taking a lot of people by surprise.
It really is, and it's Assembly Bill 519, and I just found out about it myself about a week ago, so I don't even know who the bill sponsor is or how it got there, and it really doesn't matter. It's there, and it's what we have, but. I think the idea was to try to have a special meeting so that we could say whether or not we can support some part of this or not, just to kind of give the legislature some confidence. I had a conversation with our Assemblyman Gurr, and he was, obviously I can't speak on behalf of the commission unless we have, an agenda and a vote. So, it doesn't rise to the, having an emergency meeting, but certainly a special session. So we have to post those just like we do a regular meeting. So the 3-day requirement. And so as this thing continues to develop, and that's really what it is, we have a lot of moving parts, and it's still coming out. So it's really difficult to know exactly everything that's going on, except for what you have there. I know already that there was an amendment proposed, and so you have the original bill and the amendment, but it's actually scheduled today to be on the Assembly Means and Ways and Means Committee in work session today, and they broke for lunch and they're going to come back. And they still haven't even heard it yet. So and the legislative clock is ticking. This is an exempt bill, but it is ticking. This will have to get to both houses and then the governor's office before the deadline. So there's not a lot of time to to get this process. So. And it's continuing to unfold. So I think that's the thing that's the biggest difference, that we're a little bit of a disadvantage being on this side of the state. It's very difficult for us to participate in these meetings and really hear what the intent is or what they're trying to accomplish, and so and sometimes what the intent is and what is written are two different things as well. So it's very difficult to tell. All I'm going off of is basically what I'm reading. So, I kind of want to just try to stick to some facts here. I'm not trying to, undermine anything in the past or anything like this. But the bill, it's a little bit troubling to me from in a couple of perspectives, and I'll explain that in a minute. But I want to talk about what's good about the bill. The way I look at it is it's really an appropriations bill that has some legislative law that's going to be introduced. So one of the appropriations is an appropriation for $65 million to build a new school in the Owyhee combined school area there in Owyhee, which is in Elko County. So $65 million, a brand new facility. That's great. I'm sure it's something they need. The second part of the bill that I think that's really good is they've got this rural component for counties that are under $100,000. They can levy a tax, property tax, that will help them build schools, and then they can apply for a grant. So the way I understand it right now is that there is a $25 million appropriation that's set aside for these grants. So some of these communities in the small areas, and I don't think Elko County would be any different, but let's just really focus on Mineral County or Esmeralda County or even White Pine County. They have a need for a school. It's very difficult. They just don't have the tax base to really build a new building. They're extremely expensive. So that this creates a grant opportunity for rural grant assistance to build schools. So it's a kind of a partnership. It's a partnership between the local county who imposes a property tax, and the state, and it would be a grant scenario where they can then maybe have some kind of a chance to build this infrastructure, these schools. Concept's really good. The thing that's a little bit troubling for me is kind of the way that Elko County has been singled out on this particular bill. I mean, this, excuse me, Section 2 is specifically about Elko County. It's not anything under 100,000. It is specifically Elko County. And the gist of the bill says that we will raise a minimum of 1 cent of property tax and to a maximum of 25 cents for school capital projects. And if we don't do that, they will raise it 25 cents for us. So, it's really troubling for me to see the legislature get involved, that directly involved into how we use our taxes for. But it's a lot more complicated than that. And again, I just kind of want to stick to facts and not armchair quarterback any decision that's been made in the past. But you're well. You've reported on this for a long time. We've had pay-as-you-go for 40 years. 75 cents of that tax rate was out there for building a lot of schools and a lot of different things. And this last time, our citizens said we don't support that. And that failed. So not only is this directed at Elko County, but it's also in direct opposition to what the citizens themselves voted for. So that little piece is a little bit troubling. We'll see how this works out. And again, I can just talk about this bill as it's presented. And again, I'm not an attorney or a lawyer, and these sometimes they're very complex. They're hard to read. They can be hard to understand. But the way I look at it is, I told you it sets up this grant for everybody under the population of 100,000. But there's an exemption for specifically Elko County because we've got this other appropriation. So it's, it seems to be kind of punitive, and it's hard to understand why we're being singled out like this, and I don't know that the legislature fully understands the history or what's gone on. And I don't know where this was. I would presume that this school would have been on some type of capital improvement plan for Elko County School District, or maybe there was some reason why it wasn't. I mean, who knows? I really don't know that, but it just seems like there's a little bit of an emotion that's attached to this. And like I said, the good thing is that if this is passed by both houses, governor signs it, we'll get a brand new school in Elko County in Owyhee. So that's a good piece of this appropriation. It's just some of this law that they've created that's a little bit troubling. And who knows how it's, this is what's presented. Who knows how it's going to end, whether or not there's additional amendments, or whether or not it even makes it out of both houses and signed. I don't know. So there are a couple of good components to it, but that piece, Lori, for me is a little. You look at Section 2, and Section 2 of this bill requires the Board of County Commissioners of a county whose population is 52,500 or more and less than 57,500, which is only Elko County. And again, it forces us to do a property tax increase. And if we fail to do that, then they'll do it for us. So, it's that piece is a little bit challenging. Again, if it was May, and this is the part that I was going to talk about the special meeting. If it's a May, and if we can maybe, this grant, I think the grant idea is a good idea. If we could maybe implement some tax that was we could possibly support that. Again, I can't speak for the rest of the commission, but, where you can take a tax and levy it with the state dollars, that seems to make some sense to me, especially in these rural areas where some of that resource is very limited.
There are so many moving parts to this, Delmo, and you're right, it doesn't get much more specific than it does in Section 2. And the legislation, I think, came from Assemblywoman Alexis Hansen. That is her district?
As far as I know, that is her. It's certainly not Assemblyman Gurr's district. You know, that was part of the realignment of the district. So I believe it is hers, but it's certainly not our Assemblyman Burt Gurr.
And that's important to make that distinction. And then for listeners' benefit too, this legislation that would direct Elko County, it says right here, requiring the Board of County Commissioners of certain counties to levy the property tax for capital projects of school districts. It is very specific, and it does target Elko County, and you have to, dig back and say, well, isn't building schools part of the Elko County School District's mission? Why would they even have, can they even do this, Delmo? I think that's the first question everybody's asking. Can they do this?
Well, I think that's a really good question, and I really only get to see this from, the lens that I have. And the lens I have is this experience that I've had of this last 40 years of pay-as-you-go, where 75 cents of this property tax was specifically for school buildings. It was collected by the county, held in a separate account for capital improvements that the school district had access to. So, but I know Elko County is really unique in as much that of all the 17 counties, we're the only county that had pay-as-you-go. So these other counties have other mechanisms, whether it's a bond, and there again, I don't know specifically how involved the county commissions are in those other counties in terms of whether or not they dedicate rate to the school district, or they do a rate specific for that the county maintains. I just don't know. It's a great question, but I just don't know because I only know it from my lens.
So, and as you said too, Delmo, this isn't looking back and pointing fingers necessarily, but with an understanding that we see where we got. There might be some people listening who say, hey, pay-as-you-go would not have been retired if not for, the county commission that wanted to wrest the pay-as-you-go funding away, the ad valorem tax. And I'm not saying you took a side on that, what your position was, but the county commission did end up with that property tax.
Yeah, and that's that's another real complicated part of the topic. But let me try to not get too deep into the woods on this one. So and this again is where this many years of municipal experience that I have really I think pays off. But I know because of my experience that we live in an environment that has tax abatement and a tax cap. So I also know, so it was very difficult, even though you may not have been at the tax cap, which again, gets really complicated. I'm not going to try to go into too many details. If you're not below the tax cap, the abatements have the same effect. So that even if you had room to raise taxes, the abatement took the rate away from you. So that there was a rate that was always out there. So when the school district when they lost that, we absorbed 50 cents, knowing that not only do we have a capital needs requirements and also to pay for the wildfire protection plan. We knew that if we didn't take that tax, then it would have been gone forever.
And the county had needs, as do the several municipalities that benefited. Yes.
Absolutely. And again, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for anybody else. But, in my mind, whether or not it's a year or 5 or 10 years from now or whatever the case, which is why I've said, hey, we don't want to bond against this money. Let's do it as a pay-as-you-go model, which over time, the cost of the project is going to go up. But I don't think that rate would always be guaranteed. We need to be careful because the school may have a need, and then at some point in time in the future, perhaps we could share some of that rate back with them. I think it's just so soon from after the voters said, defeated that it's, for us to just arbitrarily go against the voters. I don't know if that's a good plan either, but it gives us that, the way we did that, it gives us that option and flexibility in the future. So, these public buildings are very expensive. We had two priorities that we identified that we didn't really haven't started any appropriations, but that money has been, we've put 44 cents that can only be used for capital construction, and then 6 cents we diverted to the wildfire protection plan, which costs us an arm and a leg to pay for that.
But we have
bill.
new fire trucks, we have safety, we have response.
Right? Well, that one's actually the insurance that we pay to the state. So I would like to revisit that, because our rate is like 4 times more than any other county in the state. So I mean, that's something that's a topic for another day. But be that as it may, that's paying that rate for us. The 44 cents generates about $8.5 million. So we have the same tax. Again, it gets really complicated, but we have the same tax district the school district has. And the 44 cents generates about $8.6 million. That's going into a reserve account until we build up enough to do one of the priorities that we identified. But at the same time, and again, the commission hasn't spoken on this, but we're seeing an escalated need at the jail. All of a sudden, because we've got we've got a lot more violence going on there. The jail can't be utilized the way it was. We have separation, so we're running into capacity issues there. That's to me is becoming another really high priority that the county's going to have to figure out. How does that fit into all these other needs that we have? So, I think that I think the other thing that most people don't really realize or understand, and I would venture that it's safe to say that not even all the legislatures would understand that. When you run up against that $3.64 cap, a lot of counties, including Washoe County, doesn't have as many cities as we do. So we have four cities. We're all vying for the same tax cap. You get to the 364 really quickly. We've got West Wendover, we've got Wells, Elko, and Carlin, and Elko County and the Elko County School District. We have the ECVA, TV District, and some other ones like that, all within that district. Where in some of the other counties, there's a lot more room in that cap because, like Lander doesn't even have a real, I don't even think Battle Mountain is a formal city. So, they've got that tax rate for the whole county itself. So it's a little bit more, that pie gets sliced out a little bit more here and there's less there. So my point of all of that is that you had the school district that had 75 cents for their operating rate, and then for this, they didn't have it for the whole 40 years, but for a good period of time, they had this other 75 cents. So that 75 cents, once that went away, it freed up the cap, but we had to initiate it immediately, or it would have been subject to the abatements.
So that's where we do know from conversations with Superintendent C.J. Anderson, and I know that he'll be talking to this as much as he can. I did ask him about the Owyhee School when that became an issue at the legislature. About 100 of the tribal members went to Carson City to talk about the condition of their school, and we'll kind of roll that into this discussion. And CJ said he really, he was new to this, but he did not know if an Owyhee school had ever been on the capital projects plans for the school district when they had pay-as-you-go. He did defend the school district's response to various individual problems at the campus, whether it be boilers or problems with bats. He said that the cancer-causing issue was not something that they were aware of. Obviously, you would act on that immediately if you thought there was something like that. There was some sort of a
safety or health issue.
And I think it has to do with an emission from the ground.
I heard something, and again, this is secondhand information. So I heard there's some petroleum plume there.
Right.
I don't know what.
And that's a historic issue. Yeah.
Benzene or how it got there. I don't know any of that. But I did hear that, but I don't have any.
But that was rolled into this sort of demonstration that was done in Carson City. So that's why this was brought to the attention of lawmakers. A lot of people saying, tisk, tisk, Elko County School District, you're not taking care of tribal members. And they're turning it into something that I think paints a picture of Elko County residents unfairly, Delmo, because, I felt just as badly as anybody else to think that they were sitting there with an aging campus that was literally falling down around their heads that nobody knew about.
Yeah, and and again, I'm not intimate enough with all those details of that capital improvement plan or where that fit into the grand scheme of things, but they're children too, and I'm very concerned with the message. I mean, when I look at this, when I read this, I can't help but take away from this that we're being penalized in some way because of this, and I don't think at least from my perspective, I didn't understand that there was these issues, and heck, and that's why on one hand I'm glad it's fun. There's an appropriation. Let's go get it built. Let's get it done. So that's the good piece about this legislation.
It's a school that's about 62 miles from Elko.
Yeah,
70 something.
Gosh, I don't.
And that's the problem.
I've driven there many times.
Times, and it is a beautiful community. There is amazing agriculture that happens there, and certainly
great fishing
and wild horse. The students who participate in the art exhibit at California Trail Interpretive Center, it's among some of the most beautiful work that you'd ever see. They have great dedicated teachers, some of whom were honored recently on their retirement. So there are plenty of reasons to feel really badly that this is the situation that we're in, that they need a brand new $65 million campus. And in C.J. Anderson's, estimation, he said, wow, I don't know that have we ever replaced any of our 50-year-old plus campuses. I think we've simply improved, repaired, added on, whether or not you've had to start from scratch. But the reality is, sure, something has to be done. But would Elko County or the school district do it without being directed to do it? I guess that's the burning question. We're made to feel like that.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was an issue, right? So, and again, I don't even know if I can't speak for Elko County School District at all, but I would think that if there was a life safety health issue that we would all try to work towards doing the right thing, and again, the tone of this, and I'm just reading it, so I'm not there. I don't know what's being discussed. The tone of the text to me, kind of creates an atmosphere of division, and that's the last thing that I think any of us are. I think we're all in this together. I mean, and I don't even know exactly how that works, other than I know that they teach there as well as other. The Elko County School District provides the teaching there, and I don't even know how all that works. I just know it's always been that way.
Well, and there are different relationships because, in respect to the tribe, they are sovereign and they do have their ancestral lands and they do get support from the federal government, for good reason. I don't know if anybody's involved the delegation in having the conversation about replacing the school. Certainly whether or not there's any responsibility on that end, Delmo?
Yeah, there again, those are great and fair questions. Some, very similar to me. Like I said, I wonder to myself, I just think to myself, if there was, I would like to know why or why not it wasn't part of the capital improvement plan, and where was it in terms of priority, so
sure
that or the other thing is, I haven't seen any of the technical data. I'm not saying it's true or not true, but what level of mitigation needs to be done too. Those are all things, and one of the amendments that was out there actually creates a board for oversight, which I think is a good thing. I think that I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have some additional oversight when you're spending taxpayers' dollars, but that's not in the original bill. It's in an amendment.
So Delmo, is that oversight of the county or
no? Oversight of this grant program and this.
Okay, the rural,
project.
And it's called Financing Capital Improvements Account to Assist Rural School Districts, in particular, in financing their capital, as you mentioned.
Yeah, but it's not in the original version, but it's that piece is in an amendment. But okay. until it gets heard and goes through the process over there, who knows? But I just feel like I'm juggling here, trying to keep on top of all this because
and it was introduced May 22nd, Committee on Ways and Means, and if you look at it a certain way, Delmo, it does really point to the fact that some lawmakers will do anything to get attention, to draw boundaries, to exacerbate problems or issues. When I asked C.J. Anderson about this, certainly no engineers have gone out there and condemned this school. I mean, what are the facts that they are basing this legislation on? And again, nobody is saying that Oahe should not have a new school or a safe school or whatever means that it takes. But, just the tone of the legislation. And again, that all of us are sitting around saying, can they do that?
Yeah.
Can they override a county government, a school district?
Well, I asked our CEO of NACO, because that's the one thing that I guess is probably the most troubling thing to me. So remember, again, I try not to get too down deep in the weeds, Lori. So if I do, pull me up, though. Remember, we are not a home rule state. We are a Dillon rule state, and so the legislature kind of sets the parameters. They enable. Usually, I've seen population thresholds. We call them pop caps. For zoning issues, because from a zoning perspective, Elko County is nothing like Clark County. Those make sense. Those have been in place for a long time. But here you have a piece of legislation that carves out one county out of 70. I have never seen this happen before.
Well, do you think, just putting it out there, that Elko County kind of asked for it? Because you signed the declaration that we're a Constitution county, and that wasn't exactly popular.
Yeah, who knows what why they did it, but it's pretty clear that they did. Like I said, if I would like to try to understand what they're trying to achieve here, because that's really not very clear.
And maybe grandstanding at the at the most or the least, because honestly, the governor could still veto this piece of legislation, correct?
He sure could. I don't know whether or not he will. He's a huge proponent for education, and I think those are something that everybody's concerned about. So, it's too difficult to tell what's going to happen with this. So I'll be glad. Hopefully by the end of the day, we'll know a little bit more.
Right.
And then, I think I definitely know a lot of content, but that process over there is a little bit foreign to me. So obviously, the way they have to post agendas is entirely different than we have to post agendas, and there could be a lot of negotiations that are going on that we don't have access to or we don't know about. And can't even provide testimony. So.
Well, Delmo, it's important that you came on to talk about this, to talk about what you do know and what other commissioners are going to likely be considering Friday. As you said, maybe it could all blow over by the time the meeting is set for Friday at noon, and there's just basically the one issue on the agenda. I guess if any action, I'm looking here to see if it's an action item in particular. I don't think it just says discussion and consideration to take action relating to AB 519. What action could the county commission take? As you said, we're not a home rule state.
Yeah, I think it's more or less. I think the way I interpret that is, hey, we'll if you're going to give, that's a pretty big contribution, $65 million, and if we would raise a penny or two or whatever, and that helps. And
there is a 5-year. It's a 5-year sunset.
And I apologize if that's in the amendment or in the actual bill, but yeah, I did read that as well. But there again, it could be that would be something that we would be interested in leveraging, but the tone is do it or else.
Right. That's right at the top. And that's any citizen of any county, probably in any state in the country, would say, wow, where did this come from? We feel bad about this.
And maybe if we did say, hey, if something like this comes down, sure, we'll consider doing that. And maybe they'll take the word shall out and replace it with may. And,
requiring, right, is in here.
Say, if you don't do it, we'll do it for you. That other type of stuff. So I think that's kind of what we're really trying to, or at least from my perspective, what we'd be looking to do. And I don't know how any of the other commissioners feel about this at all.
Right. And I guess, too, the whole impact of the conversation, whether it's what we just had here or, as adults, people at a certain level, but we really should never drag teachers and students into these conversations. I think that's the worst part, because I understood, and I have not seen this, but I understood that after or at about the same time, the tribe members went to Carson City, about 100 people, to make their case for their new school. That's all they wanted to do, was bring attention that their school was vandalized.
Oh, geez.
At Owyhee. So again, that's a pain that's brought on to those teachers and students. So that should never, we shouldn't have it elevated to that, or I guess lowered to that.
Well, I've thought about, I've thought about this. I mean, we can be respectful with each other even if we disagree. I mean, what happened to? I mean, why do we have to hurt people or vandalize property? Is nonsense to me. So
right.
That's something I'll never understand, I guess.
Well, you represent hopefully a new era for Elko County. I mean, going forward, Delmo, you've always, among the first things that you did when you got on the county commission, you fulfilled your campaign promises about roads and infrastructure, and then you got right to work on the health, creating the health board, reviving the health board. Sure, there's some controversy about, the grant during COVID, and that's another conversation another time. And there were a lot of strong feelings, but Delmo, you have accomplished a lot of things on behalf of just citizens rather than just who represents ours and who represents D's. So...
Well, I love the people of Elko and Elko County, and I love this community. It's been very good to me, and that I don't ask someone what party they're affiliated with before I strike up a conversation, or I've always tried to be a person that's never met a stranger. I just want to be that kind of person to people, and just do the very best I can for the right reasons. That's it.
Well, thanks, Delmo. And Elko County did used to be that way when I first moved here. I never knew what anybody was. I was like, well, I don't know. Oh, you're running for office? Oh, that's important. Okay, yeah. So we learn those things along the way. Well, let's end this on, again, just a reminder, there is a county commission meeting noon Friday at the county commission headquarters there downtown. You can follow along online. Again, today's events at Ways and Means, will make all the difference in that conversation. We'll see where it goes. We did want to close with, though, your latest effort in also being responsive as a county commissioner with Division of Child and Family Services. Brandy Holbrook made a presentation about a crisis in rural foster care.
Yeah, there's a real shortage in foster care, and during that presentation, I'm thinking about a lot of little things, but that. To me, I was thinking, hey, do you have a frequently asked questions section? And they did, but it just needed to be kind of cleaned up, because there would be questions that I would have, if that was something that I felt called to do. And so I thought that would be a good place to start. Let's do that. And so there folks at DCFS. I always get that acronym backwards for some reason. I have no idea why. But anyway, they worked on that FAQ sheet. They got me copies of it, and then I'm sharing that with people just so people know. You need to know there's a problem, and you need to know that there is a way to address this. So I've been working with a coalition of religious leaders here in the Elko and Greater Elko area, including Spring Creek and some other areas. And we're meeting, and that's a place where I can share information like this, so that there's broader reach to people, so that they're aware. You said the word crisis. I mean, I think about who knows what the situation is as of a family, but I can't think of anything more heart-wrenching than something that impacts a child. And so there is a need if people feel like they're called to want to learn more about making a difference in rural Nevada, specifically in our area, and becoming a foster parent. I reach out to me. I'll get you hooked up or look into it. There really is a need. So unfortunately, some of these children are being there because there's not enough people to foster them. They're in hotels or having to be shipped out of shipped out of areas, out of this area into the Reno area and some other. And so, we want to try to keep some sense of normalcy for these children, because I think that's the most critical thing that they need.
That's right. So if you're listening and you would like to find out more, Shelby Riley is a great resource with the division. You can go online, ruralnvfostercare.com, but you can make a difference by fostering children with the goal of reuniting with their families in rural Nevada. So we've done a separate radio show on that, and I think we'll revisit the issue. And just imparting thanks again, Delmo. Again, another example of the care and commitment that you actually feel and that you act on is that you are revisiting this. We used to have a ministerial alliance in Elko, and it has helped us through a lot of really critical times as a community. And whether or not you're a spiritual person listening, it's simply an organization of people who can get things done and kind of fuel and energize that combined passion for care.
Yeah, it's a great resource that I hope to tap into, if nothing else than to just share information, because it's funny sometimes. I think that's the thing that is the root of all of this stuff, is that a lack of awareness or a lack of communication. So it's all about developing relationships, and with those relationships, I've been very fortunate and been able to do a lot. I couldn't do it by myself, but it was with the people that are willing to listen to my kookamimi ideas and go along for the ride with me.
Delmo Andreozzi is our county commissioner. Again, Friday will be a meeting of the commission to discuss, in particular, Assembly Bill 519. It's being considered by Ways and Means. It was introduced on May 22nd. So follow along for more information. And thank you, listeners, for joining us for today's Elko Live. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Lori. It's a great day. Get out there and enjoy it.